everyone please take their seat? Great. Welcome everyone here in the auditorium at the New School and those who are joining us by live stream. My name is Lori Lynn Turner. I'm the Associate Director of the Creative Writing Program here at the New School. I'd like to ask if everyone can give a round of applause for NBCC's 50th year. Woohoo! You're looking good for 50. And congratulations to all the finalists, too. Woohoo! Okay. I'd like to thank a few people who made this lovely night possible, and then we'll get on with the show. At the New School, Lisa Rubin, John Reed, Timmy Lewis, Kate Tooley, Bianca Lomini, Augustina Van Tien, Calissa Karolinko, Michelle Woods, Elizabeth Piazza Risi, sorry to spell, Joe Carney, and Brian Adam D'Souza. I know how to say that. I'm nervous, and I'm not even... Anyway, up at the booth, we appreciate you up there, and all the events IT team. We appreciate you guys up there. Really do. And we also appreciate here at the New School the fabulous facilities and security crew. We couldn't put on a show without them. At NBCC, I want to thank the president, Heather Scott Partington. What is wrong with, I'm sorry, Heather, I'm so nervous. Iris Jamal Dunkel, Christopher Ermshire, and all the NBCC board members that are here. It's like a homecoming. So nice to see you all. And we have Wildbound doing the producing and live stream. Thank you, Jared Drake. And we also have PT Knitwear Bookstore, Joseph Demise out there, so buy some books. And now I'd like to turn the evening over to the National Book Critics Circle board member, David Wu. David?
Well, thank you, Lori Lynn Turner and the New School for hosting our Awards Week, Wildbound Literary PR for partnering with us on Awards Week events, and Morgenstern Books in beautiful Bloomington, Indiana, for helping to sponsor the live stream of the reading. And thank you, Iris Jamal Dunkel, Christoph Ermshire, and Heather Scott Partington for your hard work on our 50th anniversary week, Awards Week. Welcome to the finalists reading for the 2025 National Book Critics Circle Awards for publishing year 2024. We don't have a prize category for science fiction, but take a moment to look around at all the accomplished writers in the audience, and you may find yourself sitting next to a genre creation, a probably pleasant-looking human being, perhaps with a gravitationally compromised torso of someone who's been sitting sedentary for a little bit too long each day, but who, like one of those furtive creatures in science fiction, those extraterrestrials fitted with human flesh, those body-snatching pod parasites, harbors something truly alien within, the otherness of writers and artists. 50 years ago, the first winner of the NBCC Poetry Award, John Ashbery, wrote in his masterwork, Self-Portrait in a Convex Mirror, that there's an otherness that is part of everything we do, tearing the matter of creation, including artistic creation, out of our hands. This otherness, this not being us, he writes, is all there is to look at in the mirror. If I were to describe the phenomenology of reading all of the 2025 National Book Critics Circle finalists, I would call it a bracing succession of writerly mirrors held up to otherness. The otherness of other eras and places, the otherness of untold stories from people rarely seen within our cultural landscape, the otherness that an informed citizen feels towards those in power, the otherness of the oppressed and different, of the countercultural and alienated, of artists and writers. You can't be a writer of the immense attainments of those gathered here tonight without wanting your work to offer something different from what has come before. And you can't be different unless you imagine yourself as an other with some fundamental discontent about the status quo that you wish to reshape, what Kathy Park Hong in her NBCC-winning Minor Feelings calls an imagination chiseled by rigor and depth to reflect the integrity of our discontented consciousness. The writers assembled here tonight have created an alternative history of our world, recentering it away from its normative aggression, heedlessness, and inanity towards the life-giving wholeness of a discontented consciousness. In these appalling and parlous times, these books are a form of resistance. To read them well is to engage in an act of resistance against the powers that be, the ones that are draining away meaning from our lives with each soulless news cycle, each self-interested intrusion on our consciousness. So tonight, I welcome the lucky audience to a respite from the news cycle, a respite that may, in fact, bring you more authentic news of the world. And I welcome, too, the wonderfully monstrous aliens among us. I welcome you to this communal celebration of all the solitary, uncertainly successful, and ultimately magnificent work that you've done as connoisseurs of otherness. I'd wager there's no finer collection of writers assembled in one place on the planet at this moment. So we'll be dividing the readers into 4 groups following the order in the program, and we'll have a brief intermission after the second group finishes reading. At the beginning of each group's reading, I'll say your names, but won't otherwise introduce you. Please be prepared to come up in quick succession and say your name again, the title of your book, and your prize category. The first group includes Gretchen Sisson, Don Lundy Martin, Wei Chu, Rebecca Nagel, Kira Josephson, Joseph O'Neill, Jean Strauss, Jordan Pavlin, and Steve Call. Okay, Gretchen?
I'm so sorry, I didn't get the instructions that we were supposed to give you all a respite from the news cycle. So I'm not sure how much I'll be doing that. My name is Gretchen Sisson. My book, Relinquished: The Politics of Adoption and the Privilege of American Motherhood, is a finalist in nonfiction. And it's based on my work studying private domestic infant adoption in the United States. This is an excerpt from an interview with Haley, who I first interviewed in 2010. And we were reflecting on her second pregnancy. I was going to keep him. I just knew I was going to keep him. That's how it was going to be. I was going to get a job, and I started going to school because I wasn't getting any jobs, because I wasn't qualified for anything. I didn't need my parents. I didn't need anyone else. Me and Jacob and the baby were going to make it. Jacob's her older son. One night later in her pregnancy, Haley was parked outside a Safeway, making use of the store's free Wi-Fi to do her homework while Jacob slept in the back seat. I just suddenly burst into tears, she remembered. And I think that's when I realized I couldn't take him. I couldn't take care of him. When Haley relinquished her son Elijah for infant adoption, she joined a cohort of American women that is remarkably small. In recent years, only about 19,000 women have relinquished newborns annually, out of approximately 4 million births, and in contrast to just under 1 million abortions. Yet the discourse around adoption, in our politics, in our popular culture, in how we think about family building broadly, gives the decisions of these comparably few women an outsized role in American ideas about pregnancy, reproductive choice, motherhood, and abortion. After the Dobbs decision came down, I spoke with many reporters who asked variations of the same question. Why aren't women who are denied abortion more interested in adoption? And I would respond that women are generally not interested in giving away their children. Can you explain more? They would ask. And I would try, but there comes a point in which I, as a researcher, cannot explain more. As a mother, though, I always wanted to ask them, under what circumstances would you give away your children?
After wind was water. After we were water. When water subsumed, when the thing that was water, when our arms were water, our gestures flower, our gestures bloom, when it was, when we were, when water was not, when we subsumed water, when we shivered into. I also didn't get that note about us being somehow a turning away or a moment of reprieve from the news, and I think about one possibility for what we might do on the cusp, as we are, of a military dictatorship. We might insist on being. This poem is titled Insistence on Being. Precarity as a form of divination, looking into each light form and breaking as old as the human body, its devastating fragility. Only the mother knew the sclerotic neck bone, calling it a fat mole. The gumption of that slang revealed itself in a melancholic gaze. Comfort and ease of hospital gown, paper clothing, I did not touch. I wondered about proximity as potential touch, my own fixation on narrowing the gendered body. I wanted the skin just right above the skeletal frame. We can call it free movement in concert with conquest, the old ways. I'm Dawn Lundy Martin. My book is titled Instructions for the Lovers. It is in the poetry category. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Wei Chu. My book is Little Seed, and it's in the Autobiography category. Deep in the cloud forest of Oaxaca, there are 7 lagoons, crystal clear with trees growing eerily in the middle of them. In my imagination, they are aquamarine as swimming pools, each glowing, the buttressed roots of the trees gnarled and black. The lagoons are enchanted, and you are forbidden to swim in them. If the water is touched by human hands, it will rain. Doesn't seem so bad, I whisper to Diana, who's translating as Fernando tells these stories. It already seems to rain a lot here, I say, hoping she'll clarify the point about the rain. She waves me off so she can keep listening. The villagers who live nearby the lagoons gather water using only cups and spoons. In another part of the forest, the day before the Day of the Dead, there is a monster, El Duende del Bosque, Fernando whispers, eyes wide. The duende can be seen at dusk, his head just above the canopy of the cloud forest. I imagine the head, a huge moss-covered boulder with maiden hairs and tiny white flowers trailing over the eye sockets. Where its head skims the canopy, birds flee in black sparks. Once, after some villagers collected an enormous pile of firewood around sunset for a holiday, the pile vanished by morning. All that was left were enormous footprints leading back into the bosque. I feel afraid that the cloud forest will disappear one day soon, and with it, the lagoons, the duende, the chatter of birds high in the canopy, the limitless grove of tree ferns. Do ghost stories warn us to take better care of what we have? To remain humble in the face of nature and the unknown? Are they a reminder that whatever we have at any moment is enough? We tell ghost stories, I think, because our ghosts are real. Thank you.
Osio naga gohin dawdon, by the fire we carry dawawelana. Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Nagel. I'm a finalist for the John Leonard Prize, and I'm going to read to you the first few paragraphs of By the Fire We Carry, the generations-long fight for justice on native land. On the outskirts of Nashville, tucked between open pastures and suburban cul-de-sac, stands a museum dedicated to the legacy of Andrew Jackson. The building was once his home. In July of 2015, I arrived to carry out a family tradition. After going through the main house and paying the entrance fee, I nervously guided myself to Andrew Jackson's grave. Our 7th president is buried behind a black wrought iron fence in a neatly kept English garden on grounds that betray their former life as a plantation. Staff in period clothing milled about. I waited until I thought no one was looking, and then I spat on his grave. President Andrew Jackson's signature policy was the ethnic cleansing of indigenous peoples from the territorial limits of the United States to west of the Mississippi. Fearing that Cherokees would not survive on the land of our creation, my ancestors, against the will and the government of the Cherokee people, agreed to leave. For this, they were killed. In my family, Andrew Jackson's betrayal is personal. A woman had seen me spit. She started yelling. "Don't believe everything you read," she screamed. Her statement confused me. What was she afraid I had read? The museum text surrounding us? The lionizing biographies available in the gift shop? The popular version of American history? The fight over truth is so bitter because power flows from the dominant narrative, the power to shape both public sentiment and public policy. In the telling of the American story, Andrew Jackson, like most US presidents, is a household name. In contrast, the history of indigenous peoples is barely known, and the stories that are popular are mostly wrong. Perhaps the woman was afraid of the book I would one day write. Thank you.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay even though the mic is a little bit low? Yes, okay. My name is Kira Josephson. I'm a translator from Swedish, and my translation of Judith Kiros O is a finalist for the Barrios Book in Translation Award. This poem is called Heart of Darkness. When the full moon drags the sea, I drag myself up by the hair. Why not call it my cold ghost, haunt me, be fair? If the new dawn breaks open, the sky cracks, if it can, like a former night can cleave into a shadow nicks my neck. The way a word can cover others, father's blood can, mother's blood, or how fog shimmers, drapes itself across past days. The way a kiss can hover over cracked lips leaking salt, or the way wordless sorrow often follows borrowed grief. If they aren't dead already, welcome them, you haunt them too. Welcome them with brittle roses, armfuls of splintered ice. The wound won't turn the page, it glows. I thought that time had scarred. Memory, dark and white at once, they cross here, text and time. The legend grows, new porous bones, moving deeper into us. When it courses through the bloodstream, fantasies bud inside us. Look, it hurries up the street. Look, it sneaks into my bed. Look, it skulks beneath the branches, hides behind the curtains, lies down between me and her. Thank you.
Hi, That's me, Joseph O'Neill, and I'll be reading from Godwin, which is a novel. On the final day of 2014, when a wintry cold has at last arrived, Sushila and Fizzy come home in the afternoon to find me sitting in the armchair. I am reading for my own diversion a book I got for Fizzy, who is 3, William Steig's Rotten Island. Something in my face must alarm my wife. What's happened, Mark? She unbuckles Fizzy, then looks over my shoulder at my laptop, which is open next to my copy of Rotten Island. The article on the screen concerns, and I can hardly bring myself to accept it, the last male northern white rhinoceros on Earth. The rhinoceros passes its days in a Kenyan conservancy under the protection of armed guards, because without such protection, poachers would certainly kill the animal. A defense system involving guard dogs, watchtowers, fences, and drones has been put in place. Also held in custody are the rhinoceros's daughter and granddaughter. It is hoped that the old bull will inseminate one or both of them and keep northern white rhinoceroses going for a little while longer. But this hope has not yet been realized, nor is the outlook good. The bull is more than 40 years old, older even than me. His sperm count is low. He lacks the strength to mount the females forcefully, as is the reproductive habit of these beautiful giant herbivores. Sushila softly kisses my left eye. She says, "Why don't I make us some tea?" And I say, "Thank you, that would be wonderful." And she answers, "You're not the last rhino." Then off she goes to the kettle on one of those tiny domestic expeditions that, when combined and viewed as a single journey, constitute the great trek of love. I'm about to protest. I wasn't identifying myself with the rhinoceros. I was identifying only the rhinoceros with the rhinoceros, when I grasp what she really means. She is referring not for the first time to my sense of our home as an island, and of everything outside it as a barbarous ocean. This negative idea of the world, Sushila has suggested, is maybe a little unrealistic. My wife is someone who reads Zbigniew Herbert for pleasure, and her insights are precious to me. But on this point, I'm not to be influenced. The world is rotten. To step outside is to enter a vicious element. Of course, I also understand that to stay indoors all day, every day, however safely and happily, is hardly salvation. The outside world inevitably seeps in, and there is no end to the mopping and the pumping and the bailing. The rhinoceros percolates.
Hello, I'm Jean Strauss, author of John Singer Sargent, Family Romance, John Singer Sargent and the Wertheimers, in the biography category. Between 1897 and 1908, Sargent painted 12 portraits of the members of one large family. The father was the eminent London art dealer Asher Wertheimer of German-Jewish descent. In commissioning this series, Asher became Sargent's greatest private patron and warm friend. The artist, working on the paintings for over a decade, mock complained of being in a state of chronic Wertheimerism. In his studio in 1901, Sargent showed his portrait in progress of the two eldest Wertheimer daughters, Ina and Betty, to a visiting American and asked, "What do you think of it?" What he himself thought came through in his questions as he went on a couple of minutes later. "Isn't it stunning of the taller girl? Don't you think she is handsome?" And again, shortly after that, "Isn't Miss Wertheimer beautiful?" She was indeed beautiful, 6 feet tall, with luxuriant dark hair and a voluptuous figure. She was 23 when Sargent entered the Wertheimer family circle. He was 41. They remained such close friends over the following decades that Ina's husband wondered whether they had been lovers. I'm using pages instead of the book because I'm combining a few different sections. After Ina died in 1936, the husband found a packet of letters Sargent had written to her. He couldn't read them. Sargent's handwriting is impossible. And he gave them to his eldest daughter, Diana, who also couldn't read them, and asked she thought Mummy had had an affair with Sargent. Diana couldn't read them and took them to her Aunt Betty, the younger woman in red here in this picture, and raised the question of an affair. Betty reportedly said, "Don't be silly, darling. Everyone knew he was only interested in Venetian gondoliers." Apparently, Ina's husband didn't know. It's a good line, which occurs twice in the Wertheimer family lore and is probably apocryphal. There's no evidence of Sargent having had a sexual affair with anyone, male or female, although his interest definitely inclined toward men. Still, if the gondolier's story indicates the Wertheimers' tolerant attitude on such matters, it helps illuminate his ease with the family.
I'm Jordan Pavlin. I'm the publisher of Knopf. I have the honor of reading from Alexei Navalny's memoir, Patriot, which is nominated in the category of autobiography. January 17th, 2024. Exactly 3 years ago today, I came back to Russia after treatment following my poisoning. I was arrested at the airport, and for 3 years, I have been answering the same question. Why did you come back? The call for me is different. I traveled the length of this country and declared from every stage, I promise that I won't let you down. I promise that I won't deceive you and I won't abandon you. By coming back to Russia, I fulfilled my promise. People have a legal right to rise up against this illegal, corrupt power, against this junta that has grabbed and stolen everything it could from us. The paradox is that dozens of crooks every day rob us and you, blind, and we allow this to happen. Well, I'm not going to stand for it. I say again that I'm going to remain on my feet however long I have to, be it 1 meter from this cage, be it 1 meter inside this cage. I'm going to stand tall. Maybe this is going to sound naive, and I know it's become the norm to laugh ironically and sneer at these words, but I call on absolutely everyone. Wait, I practiced and I can do this. I call on absolutely everyone not to live by lies. There is no other way. There can be no other solution in our country today. I call on everyone not to live by lies. I want to say loud and clear, they may put me in isolation. They may imprison me, but someone else will rise up and take my place. I haven't done anything unique or difficult. Anyone could do what I have done.
Humbling to follow Navalny. Thank you, program organizers. That's my book. It's in nonfiction. It draws on new material, tape recordings, and other materials from inside Saddam Hussein's regime. It attempts to enlarge our understanding of the origins of the tragic invasion of Iraq, partly by taking Saddam seriously and partly by using this new information to renew our study of the character of dictatorship. And that's where this excerpt begins. As he reached his early 60s, Saddam decided to write a novel. He had an elegant hand, his Arabic calligraphy laced with long lines. He might produce 10 or 30 or even 50 handwritten pages a day. Starting in the late 1990s, his pages arrived by courier at the office of his press secretary, Ali Abdullah Salman, who worked initially inside the Republican Palace and later in a nearby villa. About half a dozen editors and translators worked with Salman. He did most of the copy editing. It was a delicate task, given the sensitivities of writers generally and the potential penalties for offending this one. He marked up Saddam's manuscripts with proposed corrections of syntax and grammar and then passed them back. Saddam wrote the same way that he spoke. His sentences were long and twisting. He would start out with one line of observation, disrupt himself with a digression, and then strike off in a new direction. He did not call it the weave, so far as I'm aware. He would get lost in parenthetical phrases. His asides included Arabic proverbs and increasingly Quranic verses. Saddam would accept only some of the changes proposed by his editors, and he would return a second draft for typing and sometimes ask his editors to check historical facts. The more he wrote, the more he identified as a man of letters. One evening, at the height of his novel writing period, he heard a television presenter make a grammatical error while reading a statement. The president telephoned the Minister of Culture to protest. An investigation ensued. The presenter reread the statement properly on the air and was suspended for 6 months. Saddam his first completed novel, Zabiba and the King, published in 2000, is a polemical allegory set in ancient Babylon. It recounts a love affair between a married king, transparently Saddam, and Zabiba, a young and wise woman who is a stand-in for the Iraqi people. Much of the novel consists of didactic dialogue. Zabiba educates the king on how to rule even more successfully than he already does, and the king, as he falls in love with her, takes her advice respectfully. When the book came out in 2000, though it had no name on it, it only read it was by its author. There was no confusion in Iraq about who had authored it. The Ministry of Culture printed thousands of copies, and Iraqi reviewers showered the novel with praise. Saddam's office ordered that copies be handed out to members of visiting foreign delegations. The Iraqi National Theater staged Zabiba as a musical, which Saddam attended, and a 20-part adaptation eventually aired on Iraqi television. Saddam increasingly acted as writer-in-chief. He oversaw a patronage system of novel writers and poets that assured a steady living for those willing to follow the regime line. The program grouped writers into 3 tiers and allocated stipends accordingly. More than 5 million dinars for books written by the top group. A subsidized program through April 2001 involved commissions to 80 writers of novels, stories, and scripts who were honored by meeting with the president. A committee of readers evaluated the work for how it addressed the heroism of the people and the armed forces. And in addition, Saddam paid $100 and $500 to poets who adulated him. So there we are, coming soon to Fox and Friends. Thank you.
The second group consists of Iman Murcell, Jennifer Chang, Edwidge Dantica, Will Vanderheiden, and Rodrigo Frezon, Hanif Abdul-Rakib, Marie-Helene Bertino, Amy Reading, and Zito Madhu. So, Iman?
Hello, my name is Iman Marcel, and I'm reading from Traces of Inayat, translated by Robin Mager, and I read actually a paragraph that is from Searching for Inayat, a tomb in City of the Dead in Cairo. مشيت بلا هدف، أتفرج على بوابات أحواش وأقرأ أسماء عائلات. أشاهد الكثير في كل خطوة دون أن أقصد التلصص. مزاجي غامض، لست محبطة، فقد علمتني عنايات منذ سنين ألا شيء عنها يأتي بسهولة. Around me, the living were sleeping and waking, eating and bickering and breeding. It was somehow ugly to witness, painful even, a scene better not seen at all, yet at the same time, it offered powerful evidence of a will to live, of their resolve. Passing by the incised names, bedrooms, kitchens, and washing tubs, all open and spilling onto the street. The electric cables strung tight across coffee catastrophe, and every soul shall taste death. My initial shock shaded into familiarity. Cactus next to dried flowers and next to mounds of rubbish, the smell of piss and fried garlic, barefoot children scampering, one in an Adidas t-shirt, a gas range set on a grave, a washing line slung from tree trunk to marble headstone, Mayad al-Hinnawi singing, I adore you, and despite that shell, beneath a tree that fronted the green of a finely worked iron gate, a knot of men all smoking in their underwear, while white shorts and vests and nothing else beside, as though lounging by an invisible seashore. Thank you.
I'm Jennifer Chang, and I'm the author of An Authentic Life, which is a finalist in the poetry category. The Innocent. For weeks we watched for hatchlings to come, of 3 smug eggs tucked into a nest, the nest tucked into the crook of a neighbor's honeysuckle. Time nodded, was nodding, the shred of living, how offhand the wind teeters toward erosion. Hard at work, on guard in 2 backyards, the robins mothered and fathered their territory daily, and beyond, our block's alley stretched, aimless as fields, where watching happens by accident, by nature. They'd squawk on a street lamp, a cedar fence, our back stoop, warning off the tabby, my 2 young sons, everyone stuck at home. I lost my mind with watching and thought it grief or egotism, the bruise of yesterday, not least the sky unraveling another season. It was easy to mistake the bared skeletal pinions as lawn clippings, old leaves, that circle in the grass, a massacre of feathers, that terrible cat. It was easy to lose my mind. One neighbor said, let's not tell the children. Why know the world as always faded toward remnant? Another said, go, take the nest, set it under glass, and make it a lesson. Instead, I watched our habits pass, the honeysuckle fade from sickly sweet to nothing but heat. Call it science. It's summer again, and then everything's remnant. What do we do those days, stuck at home, my sons might someday ask? We lived or tolerated living. We looked away from death. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Edwige Dantica. I will be reading from We're Alone in the nonfiction category. In A Rainbow for the Christian Rest, the Haitian poet and novelist René Despeste writes that one day, water will carry us to the other side of humanity on an arc en coeur, a hard boat of the sea. Je dis bonjour à cette eau qui nous vient des confins, de la douleur. I greet this water that comes to us from the depths of pain, from the depths of the sea. In September 2019, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reminded us that by 2050, oceans will rise high enough to wipe out low-lying cities like Miami, where I was living at the time. Hurricanes, extreme heat, droughts, floods, and wildfires will displace over 250 million people, the panel wrote. These are enough people to create what could be the 5th largest country in the world, a floating and migrating nation with no landmass, no borders, railways, roadways, seaports, airports, schools, hospitals, communication, financial institutions, and disaster management systems, all of which this floating and migrating group would need to acquire from the other nations that have somehow managed to survive. We can imagine that the citizens of this pariah state will soon be arriving in even more significant numbers at every remaining border. They would be trafficked, smuggled, crammed by the millions into refugee camps. They would continue to drown by the thousands at sea, even as their deaths is recorded and viewed by millions. Few countries will want to embrace or absorb this populate, yet no fences, walls, or armies will fully hold them back. I have become a river, they might each proclaim, just as the pest has before them. There now, it is done. I have become a river. It will be a great adventure all the way to the sea. What name will they give me on the maps? From where does the stream of unknown water come, they will ask. What sky does it reflect in its waves? What calm, what hunger, what sorrow, though wherever the water flows somehow becomes home. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Rodrigo Fresan. I'm the author of Melville, finalist for the Gregg Barrios Book in Translation Award. And I've always thought that, reading yourself is as much fun and as exciting as sadly dancing with your own sister. So in these times of mud captains and shipwrecks, I'm going to allow my sister to dance with Will van der Heyden, who is the author in English of the book. He wrote the book, that one. I wrote this one in Spanish, with chat posts from Open Letter as a magnificent chaperone. Watch them dance. So I'm going to read just the first sentence in Spanish. A mi lado, junto a mí en todas partes, en el aire, casi como señales de humo suspendidas cual aliento tibio en el frío invierno, son y tienen lugar y voz las palabras de los muertos, las palabras dictadas por los muertos. Sueño que las escribo, sueño que escribo. Take it away, Bill.
I'm going to pick up where he left off, but in English. I write with the permissive authority of dreams, which, in truth, is far closer than we want to believe to the ever-changing structure of our existences, whose only iron and inoxidizable law is that of constant and elastic change, beginning and ending and beginning again and again, sometimes on the same voyage or in the same day. What we do is nothing more than live rewriting, truly, the fictions of our real lives. Lives that only attain the precision of a useful or at least reliable design with the immovable perspective of death, that finale that doesn't allow for final corrections or alternate versions, and off of which there, in death, they live on. Lives in which the only thing that absolutely lasts is absolute death. There, the merciful dictatorship of the dead who notice us so that we notice them, and whom we sometimes try to forget, only to realize that they won't forget us, and all they do is remind us that we'll never be able to forget them. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Hanif Abdurraqib. The book is There's Always This Year. It's a finalist in criticism, and it's an honor to share stage with all my peers tonight. I'm going to read a series of odes to Ohio aviators. Virginia Hamilton, Dayton, Ohio, 1934 to 2002. I recall the cover first, tucked in the back of a shelf, brown with age but still luminescent. The people could fly, of course, there they were, hands on each other's shoulders, all of them, above the clouds. As a boy, I loved the animals who pulled tricks on the fools who thought them too small to disrupt the divine order, but of course, it was always about the enslaved, the mercy of flight, no chains to hold what the sky desired, freedom beyond language. On the day my mother was buried, it rained, but the sky was awash with dark birds, their shouts wrecking the impermanent gray, and I remember believing she was up there, ascending beyond the dark feathers. Toni Morrison, Lorain, Ohio, 1931 to 2019. And I won't hold you but to mention that in the story I love most, Toni Morrison says, my mother talked about her dreams like they were real, because she never said, I dreamed. She would always say, you know, I thought. And I find it most precious, the things we hold when we make it back down to earth, how upon waking the dream might begin to slip through our fingers, and so the dream must be told to anyone with a willing ear and some time to spare, and that's how we stay suspended in the magic of it all. Kid Cudi, Cleveland, Ohio, 1984 to present. Man on the Moon, Man Floating Elsewhere. The mixtape cover has a helmet in shadows, in rainbows, and the homie says, yeah, I'm high, while blowing tendrils of smoke into the air, and he means to say, I am beyond here, I am otherwise inconceivable, and wouldn't you like to know how you might die and how the shit goes down? I believed it when Cudi said he sees ghosts. Not all haunting is of an evil sort. Sometimes it's love. Sometimes the people who never wanted to leave find a way to stay. The hoodie at the concert reads, thank God I see ghosts, and yes, praise the Lord, we should all be so lucky. LeBron James, Akron, Ohio, 1984 to present. Believes home is wherever you land, wherever holds you after you take flight. It is better this way. You cannot be a king to everyone. You cannot be a king forever. No ruler is unkillable, but goddamn, praise be, the executioners have yet to find a weapon that will do the trick. Hanif Abdurraqib, Columbus, Ohio, 1983 to present. Never dies in his dreams. In his dreams is infinite, has wings, feathers that block the sun, and yet, in the real living world, has seen every apocalypse before it arrives, been the architect of a few bad ones, still wants to be alive most days, been resurrected so many times, no one is surprised by the magic trick anymore. Thanks.
Marie Helene Bertino, fiction, Beautyland. Final transmission on human life. The moan humans make when they listen. Anything over rice. Thin tomato slices dusted with oregano. Dominic, when he used to be left out of things like passing the joint, used to say, "What's my name, Skip?" The silence under an overpass when driving in a storm. Control top pantyhose. The roses behind the mobile station that bloom like they're in Versailles. The ripples in my hair after sleeping in a braid. The word yet, because it allows you to believe more than one thing. Yolanda Kay, pretending to dance on top of a pyramid, using her yoga mat like a cape, doing Diana Ross. The dog in the park, in the sun, catching the ball and bringing it back, flashing between his people like a gem. Fridays on the subway, when suitcases spring up like violets as people leave, as people arrive, and then again on Monday as people return, as people leave. I have never lost my beginner's eye for this city. I've never stopped looking at the skyline when the 7 emerges from the tunnel. My little dog on his hind legs, dancing. Wine, blankets, and robes, because they take away the body. A body is a hard thing to have. I was sent here to report on human beings, and I have failed. I have not used my life enough. But I was always doomed. Language is pitiable when weighed against experience. And there was always an unattainable aspect to my work, which they must have known. Otherwise, they would have sent someone less sensitive. By far, humans who cause the most damage are those who promise to be some kind of home and are not. By far, my favorite human emotion is joy, because it is so misunderstood and because it contains all the others.
Hello, my name is Amy Reading. My book is The World She Edited, Catherine S. White at the New Yorker. It is a finalist in Biography. Mary McCarthy remembered their almost unvarying editorial ritual. First, Catherine would treat her to lunch at the Algonquin, one martini apiece, where they would gossip, discuss common friends and connections, and exchange opinions, which often jibed, of current books and authors, discuss stories that had appeared in the New Yorker, sometimes critically. Then they'd cross the street and head up to Catherine's office, where they'd go over a piece sentence by sentence, their work punctuated by Catherine rising to consult the big Webster on the lectern in her office. And they'd finish the editing in a single session. McCarthy remembered two things that made Catherine's editing superlative. She saw herself as a defensive bulwark against Harold Ross's sometimes ridiculous queries. And often she would draw a line through an editorial question or suggestion and make a little sound of annoyance. Catherine was distinctly on the author's side. Also, she was, for McCarthy, the ideal editor because they thoroughly enjoyed talking over the tiniest of word choices, such as when to use gray, G-R-E-Y, versus G-R-A-Y. The former was, to both of them, a lighter shade. This is what Catherine produced as a magazine editor. These sessions of intense receptivity, of immersive concentration on a writer's piece, of reciprocal reading and sympathetic negotiation. Her lengthy editorial letters approximated these in-person sessions and were an extended moment in which the writer could be seen and her work read. Taken together with the evolving structure behind Catherine's acquisitions, the first reading agreement, her generous and often unsolicited advances against earnings, her interest in turning one-off stories and reminiscences into serials, what distinguished Catherine's editing is the way it offered to her writers the expansion of the solitary moment of reading and writing, a private, intimate partnership entirely off the page in which the writer could share her expression from the smallest compositional unit to the largest narrative arc. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Zito. The book is The Minotaur Kali Lanza, and it is in the autobiography category. Okay, so the part that I'm gonna read, I'm in Venice at this time, and I am just staring over a bridge that's close to where I'm staying, being very dramatic about everything. Okay. I love the water, rivers, lakes, seas, and oceans. When I think of the best life for myself, it's next to the water. Other circumstances of life can change, but what doesn't change is the water. I need to be near it, and I need to feel it close to me. On the bridge with my eyes closed, I saw myself floating on the waters of the lagoon, floated and drifting away on top of the water, which was peace, being carried away, facing the moon and the stars. That's how I've always saw myself in the world, with the aloneness, distance, and lightness of that feeling. A necessary lightness to counter the heaviness underneath the surface, the destructive power of the world that the water represented. The surface of the water also suggests the possibility of being taken under, and this potential for drowning has its pull as well. Once, on a weekend trip in college, my friends and I went to one of the lakes around Detroit. As a game, some of the boys decided to race to a buoy in the distance and then come back. To swim faster, I went underwater. When I told this story years later, I said that beneath the surface of the water, I lost one of my contacts, and in trying to rub the stinging out of my eyes, I sank. But that's not totally honest. What happened was that deep inside the water, I lost that lightness. I forgot myself. I stopped swimming and looked in awe at the dark blue of the water, with its pressures all around me. I was overwhelmed and heartbroken, though I didn't know why the view pained me so much. It seemed to happen in an instant, but when I came to my senses, I realized I had been sinking the whole time. My body went into shock. It panicked and thrashed, trying to get us back to the surface. I watched myself struggling from outside of myself. I remember the exact thought that came to my mind as my exhausted body tried and fell to surface, falling back deep into the water. Looking at the light reflecting on top of the water, I thought, this isn't a bad way to go. Luckily, a lifeguard came to my rescue. When reminiscing about this near-death experience, I drifted off to sleep on the bridge of deep breaths. A few minutes later, I was awakened by the sound of heels hitting the streets. Tired and tipsy, I made my way back to the apartment. There are a few more bridges I developed an affinity for while I was in Venice. There's the most famous one, the Bridge of Sighs, which Ethan showed me after we walked through Piazza San Marco. The bridge was built in the 1600s to connect the new prison to the interrogation rooms in the Doge Palace. The legend is that before being in prison, convicts would look out from the bridge and sigh at the view, savoring it in the knowledge that they wouldn't see it for a long time. Like all legends, there's uncertainty whether this is true or not. The bridge is considered one of the most romantic spots in Venice. Many couples kiss under it while riding in gondolas, and Lord Byron famously references it in Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. In normal times, we would have been able to walk across the bridge and take photos, just like the countless other photos that have been taken from that bridge. But I like that we weren't able to do so. Regardless of whether the myth of the bridge was true or not, I felt uncomfortable about seeing such an object as romantic, considering that its function was to transport people from one state of being, of existence in the world, to another, of being disappeared. Thank you.
One of the best ways to support these extraordinary writers is to purchase their books. And P&T Bookstore has a booth outside where you can do so during our intermission and after the reading. In fact, you can do so right now because we're having an intermission. Please come back in 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, it looks as though people are finding their way back to their seats. Go ahead. Give it another minute. Not yet. Okay. Oh, okay. Now, okay, great. Well, welcome back, everybody. The next group of readers consists of Oliver Baez-Bendorf, Adam Higginbotham, Jesse McCarthy, Nora Lang, Taya Miles, Manjula Martin, and Carrie Corrigan, and Cynthia Carr. So, Oliver?
Hi, my name is Oliver Baez-Bendorf. I will be reading from my book, Consider the Rooster, which is a finalist in poetry. And this poem is from the section of the book that's called Egg in Space. Stonewall Sestina. Monumental bricks split open, heroic future cast in stone. Pleasure and angry parade, loving parade. Throw bricks from pleasure to open archives in better future. My future, a parade receding in Bustelo bricks, so open about pleasure. Because pleasure portends future desire, open. After parades, make brick trafficking and representation. In bold pleasure, my brick rubs future clay parades. I'm open. Everyone's opening up in moans. Dogwood parades toward pleasure from future gravestones. Now we've walked in the open and know that pleasure. Everything takes place in between sensations and the future of planets. This queer parade, these blessed stones. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Adam Higginbotham, and I'm the author of Challenger, a true story of heroism and disaster on the edge of space. And this is a few lines from the opening of the first chapter of the book. Fire on pad 34. Martha Chaffee was in her kitchen making hot dogs for the kids' dinner when she saw Michael Collins at the front door. In that moment, she realized she was a widow. The astronauts and their families formed a small, tight group in the neighborhood. Togethersville, they called it. And that evening, a few of the wives were already gathering in the living room of the Chaffees' yellow brick house on Barbuda Lane. Someone had mentioned an accident, but at first there seemed no reason for Martha to worry. The cars pulling up on the street outside could be part of the routine Friday evening exodus from work. Besides, although Martha's husband Roger was away training down at Cape Canaveral, he wasn't even scheduled to fly. Yet now Collins was standing on her doorstep, solemn and alone. There could be only one explanation. "I know, Mike," she said, "but you've got to tell me." She turned, and Collins followed her silently down the narrow hallway. In the den, where her two children were watching the TV, someone reached over to turn it off before the news bulletins began. It was January the 27th, 1967.
My name is Jesse McCarthy. My book is The Blue Period, Black Writing in the Early Cold War. That's in the category of criticism. I'm going to read from the end of the book a passage where I'm glossing a novel called The Catacombs by William Denby from 1965. Denby sounds a blue note in this transitional text, feeling out the new revolutionary politics on offer. The iconic March on Washington, so central to our mythologies of racial advancement, is for him evacuated of its assumed authenticity. Bill relies on an inside voice that tells him not to trust the spectacle he is supposed to identify with. This negative affect prompts him not only to dissent, but also to interrogate his own position, his own complicity as a black intellectual. Quote, obviously history was being made that hot day in August in Washington, but who was making it? If history now is to become televised theater, where are we, the intellectuals, to stand? In the audience, on the stage, or in the prompter's cramped and dusty pit? David Scott has proposed that tragedy is the genre that best describes the post-colonial freedom struggle. Denby takes a discomforting alternative view, that the genre of this struggle carried out historically just as a mediated society of the spectacle began to colonize the totality of public discourse is actually the tragicomic. Theatrically, historically, the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy was a terrible mistake, Bill observes. America is sick in ways that repeatedly lead to farce, to bad television. Williams Denby's Roman catacombs are vast and deep. The narrative of history and the black riposte to it ring out again and again through its chambers. Seemingly distant yet interlinked voices bump into each other in the dark. In the troubling years I've been at work on this book, the notion that the Western Enlightenment may culminate in a tragicomic farce, swallowed up by the frenzied society of the spectacle it has spun out, is not nearly as satirical as it once seemed. One effect of stepping back and attending closely to the Blue Period is that it gives us the opportunity to retrieve and repurpose those writings that appeared in the years right before the storms hit, the catastrophes that continue to rage into the present. The uneasy, introspective, and dissonant qualities of that span of years in the past century resound for us like weird echoes coming through on the lower frequencies. They send word from a time just before one world historical order fell apart and another struggled, continues to struggle, to be born. Their sense of time is not ours. Yet sooner or later, most of us will confront a sense of dissonance with the signposted direction of history, or find ourselves alienated from every ideology on offer. Who knows then, but that one of these blue books will speak to you. Thank you.
Us Fools, Nora Lang, fiction. Old Abe was a bald eagle. He was born in Wisconsin at the start of the Civil War. Abe was too young to fledge when an Ojibwe chief chopped down the tree where he was roosting. The chief murdered his sole sibling, beat off his parents, and then traded the bird for a bushel of corn. Union soldiers adopted Abe as a mascot. The soldiers toted him around, dressed the bird in dangly red, white, and blue ribbons. Abe fought alongside American soldiers for America. He was lauded by the likes of Ulysses S. Grant and General Sherman. Abe could fiddle. He could shake hands with a talon. The war ended, and old Abe was incarcerated in the basement of Wisconsin's Capitol. His wings were routinely clipped. He was neglected and almost starved to death before eventually dying from smoke inhalation in a fire. His corpse was mounted, displayed in a glass box, and incinerated in another fire. It seemed to me humiliation was the worst of all violence. From birth, stories of the women in our family had me inches from death by humiliation. In my room, I started to question whether motels were the best places to recover from a lifetime spent in America. I grabbed the trash can. I vomited. I took a beer from the sloshy ice bucket. Last we spoke, my sister Jo was boarding an Alaskan fishing boat, pregnant with her daughter. She was headed to sea, entering a new level of hardship, carrying the hope of a new generation. She was a rebel who never shied away from accusations of sentimentality. And from our stubborn and hardy lineage, she defiantly carried a child that embodied her survival and defined us both, the us that could be. Joanne wanted this, motherhood. She told me as much over the telephone. She had said she had more love to give. I asked her why. Why was she hell-bent on making bad decisions like getting on an Alaskan fishing boat pregnant? She shot me her middle finger straight into the camera's lens. I said, "Sometimes I love you." "You mean indefinitely," Jo said. Love in our family was a rubber band. It was just as Joanne said. I will love you indefinitely.
Good evening, you all. My name is Taya Miles, and my book is Night Flyer, Harriet Tubman and the Faith Dreams of a Free People. It's in the biography category. Of all the abolitionist praise collected and printed as testimonials in the first full-length account of Harriet Tubman's life, Frederick Douglass's words are the most perceptive. Douglass named, quote, the midnight sky and the silent stars as witnesses to Tubman's actions, recognizing, as Tubman had insisted all along, that she did not make her stand alone. The stars had watched over her, and she would in turn observe their light, seeing in them a host of incandescent messengers. Tubman's associate, Helen Tatlock, remembered, quote, Harriet knew the North Star. That was the one thing she insisted that she was always sure of. Waterways had shored her up too, welcoming Tubman into their depths and allowing her and her parties safe passage. Her most intimate natural allies seem to have been those sprung from the soil, weeds that defied ordered society, and trees that populated forests where she walked, worked, and wended north. She may even have relied on landmark rocks to help her chart her course, or rested on a flat, smooth stone like baby Suggs in the novel Beloved. By the end of her life, she had herself become like these various features of nature, a guiding star, a giving tree, a saving river, and a guide rock. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Manjula Martin. My book is The Last Fire Season, a personal and pyro-natural history in the category of autobiography. This takes place when I'm in a burned forest. I'm impressed by the post-fire life of the forest, but I can't deny that it's devastating to be here. Before now, I've been in burned parts of forests and towns, but I have never been entirely inside a wildland fire scar, and never in an environment I know so well. Alongside my grief, I feel something else. If we are to live in the damaged environments that climate change is making, we need to cultivate what the journalist Cal Flynn called a new way of seeing, a new way of looking at the land. When I drive up to the ridge in Big Basin and gaze out at the vast black treescape, I am reminded of a shelf of books I've collected at home. They're books about fire, and their covers are red and orange, flames and more flames, bright, hot. But this burned place shows me that the color of fire is not red, it is black, dirt pulverized by heat. It is green, new laurel sprouts and carpets of ferns. The color of fire is blue and white, sky and clouds that can now be seen easily from beneath a 1,000-year-old tree with no branches. I might recognize it as beautiful if it didn't all feel so askew. A memory. My first. I'm a toddler sitting in dirt, knees bare, head full of the smell of redwoods and eucalyptus. I wipe my nose and red dust comes out. Tree sneezes. I remember sitting in the way back of a station wagon on a road exactly like this. I remember the down slant of sun through branches, the branches big as trees, the trees bigger than the sun, the road twistier than my stomach. The rhythm of the shade on my skin keeps pace with the creek's whisper. I can stand inside trees. I remember a little red schoolhouse, a commune where midwives lived. Wooden houses, some finished, some still being born. Crooked angles, the tang of cast iron in the kitchen. A plastic above-ground pool filled with dirty, warm water and gangs of kids at play in the dirt. Leaves of 3, let it be. Plantain weed is for leg scrapes. You chew it up and press it on the wound. I remember being carried to the car and how cold the night feels, but how soft. The howl of feral rain. My memories of these trees and mountains before the fire are inextricable from my childhood, my identity. With absence, the physical sensuality of any locale fades. Over time, the experiences and places that form a person come to dwell mostly in memory. As decades pass, a person's primary relationship with the places of their origin becomes more about the idea of the places than their physical reality. With fire, my experience of this phenomenon becomes more pronounced. A burned place confounds memory. Fire makes the familiar newly strange. In the mountains, after fire, I am unsure of how to deal with the knowledge that these parts of my past no longer exist within a physical space. My memory of the place has become the place. When will it be back to the way it was? I repeat out my car window to the cruel blue sky, that refrain of grief. Not within my lifetime, possibly not ever. But who am I to say how a forest should be? I will learn to see the beauty in the black and the green.
Hi, I'm Carrie Corrigan. My book is Miss May Does Not Exist, The Life and Work of Elaine May, Hollywood's Hidden Genius. It is a finalist in the John Leonard Prize, for the John Leonard Prize. And this is just a short excerpt from the first chapter. If there's one thing Elaine May knows how to do well, it's tell a good story. But where the truth, a detail she relentlessly fixated upon, at times to her own detriment, seems to be a sticking point in all of her work, when it comes to her life, the facts are more malleable. As a writer, she knew which parts of her story were interesting and worth emphasizing, which parts were not just dull, but tragic and traumatic, things that needed to stay buried far from an audience's prying eyes. Elaine would not be the first 20th century artist to choose to mythologize her own life, and she certainly is not the last. In her earliest days with the Chicago Compass Players, she entertained colleagues with tales of her birth in a car trunk in Brazil or Argentina, her abduction by a Yiddish comedy star, and her life growing up in a suitcase. As overnight fame with Mike Nichols brought an endless string of magazine profiles that would practically print anything they said verbatim, bending the truth became an entertaining way to break up the monotony, a game to see how much they could get away with before someone called her bluff. She spun herself into a woman who was fluent in Portuguese, gave her measurements as 24, 35, 147 and a half, claimed to be a distant cousin of Ed Sullivan. The occasion doesn't even really matter. You know that sometimes she changes stories just for fun, comic Phil Rosenthal asks, and she'll do it to me, her friend. The story was hers to own and adjust however she saw fit, until the thread of the narrative slipped away from her and instead became a giant web of half-truths to untangle. With Elaine's penchant for elusive privacy, the facts she personally presents as true must always be taken with a grain of salt. We are all, to varying degrees, unreliable narrators of our own lives, letting others know only what we want them to know. In life, this isn't really malicious as this isn't so much malicious as it is incidental, a simple part of being a human who desires connection and acceptance above all else. What truth can I tell that's as good as this lie they believe, Elaine would reflect decades later. The fact is that we can kind of feel like we can choose the truth. Well, sure. Elaine, though, wants you to know that you're being set up. She wants you to question what is a fact and what is a good story. It's the mark of someone both acutely aware of the mind's ability to present alternate versions of reality, and of someone so distrustful of others that she expects the feeling to be mutual. I will tell you anything, she told an interviewer, but I warn you now, it's a lie. Thank you.
There we go. I'm Cynthia Carr, a finalist in Biography for Candy Darling, Dreamer, Icon, Superstar. Candy was a Warhol superstar and transgender icon. And I'm going to read a short passage that is relevant now, given all the current attacks on trans rights, in fact, attacks on trans existence. Candy wrote an important letter to her cousin Kathy Anderson during the holidays. It's as close to a statement of her core beliefs as she ever made. Kathy wanted to be an artist, but she was afraid to come to New York and didn't seem to believe in herself. Candy began her letter with an apology for being out of touch, explaining that she'd been busy figuring out her own identity and day-to-day living arrangements, and she wouldn't be joining the family in Connecticut for the holidays. I will not cease to be myself for foolish people, no matter how dear, wrote Candy, for foolish people to make harsh judgments on me that may hurt others that I love. There is one thing I must tell you because I just found it to be a truth. I'm sure it must have come to you. You must always be yourself no matter what the price. It is the highest form of morality. We should both try to live it. We've got to always keep heart and mind open. You can disguise your emotions. You can even numb them. And finally, you can paralyze them. And that is tragic. Our emotions are the only clues to our identity. The only true meaning in life is passion. The passion to learn, to paint, to love, etc. Don't dare destroy your passion for the sake of others. That was in 1967. Candy was not political, but she knew who she was. Thank you.
After the final group reads, our president of the National Book Critics Circle, Heather Scott Partington, will have some parting words. The final group consists of Cindy Jung Oak, Gwendolyn Harper, Legacy Russell, Hisham Mater, Jane Kamensky, Tricia Romano, Erica Murillo, and Zain Khalid. So, Cindy?
Hi, my name is Cindy Jung Oak, and I am the very grateful author of Word to Word in the Leonard Prize category, which is a first books category. And so I thought I would think about what is mentioned in a lot of first books. And I think mothers come up a lot in first books, maybe all books. Not only people, but the places or dreams or words that parent us. So this is the one poem I have addressed to my mom, and I did show it to her and sort of seek her blessing because there's, private information, revealed, and I was so nervous to ask, and she was like, how many copies can we get? I have to show all my friends my poem, so sometimes I think we need not fear the ends of our writing. Mama, I am sorry for the stillbirth and the live ones, for my books, degrees, and all the other ways I have betrayed you, for unlinking our arms a dozen times the year before your surgery, unconvinced you needed the relief, until the afternoon I walked up from the subway station, and that before you saw me, I then watched you on the street, alone, without even a rail, lurching and winding. The calls, of course, that I did not return, the care I would not acknowledge out of cowardice, and a hope to never need you or to need anyone. For every question I refused to answer or did not answer generously. For remembering the orange juice you put in the guacamole and the sprouts washed in hot water. That this list, like your prescription deliveries and the group chats, will end before either of us is ready. About the rug you saved for, and the man who pretended not to speak the street language, you're holding up the cash as you pointed to what you wanted. I'm sorry, he said, I can't understand you. You know, Alma, that I am sorry differently. I promise you I will not say it to be cruel or polite, that never will I be so banal, so American. Thanks again.
Hi, I'm Gwendolyn Harper, and I am reading in the translation category, and the book is A Last Supper of Queer Apostles, and the writer is the wonderful, always extravagant, always alive, Pedro Lemebel. Bisagua on point. And only today, when the country has leapt into the future, lugging a knapsack of cadavers that drip blood onto the path of truth and reconciliation, when the days of terror have all but evaporated into the past's menstruated halo, nights of doors banged open, mornings with olive green trucks outside the house waiting for passengers on their way to banishment, heading south to an island left off the map, heading north to an abandoned saltpeter mine turned into a concentration camp. And right then, in that moment when the soldiers are forcing them to go, holding machine guns and shoving the new detainees who, hysterical, leaving behind their past, their homes, their families, have no idea what to throw into exile's suitcase, grabbing a sweater, a scarf, and a coat in case it got cold. But Jose, don't forget your pills, but Carmen, your needles and insulin. Plus socks, undies, and sanitary napkins for the girl woman arrested at school. In the rush, not knowing what the future would hold, where they were going, it was hard to predict what to pack, especially if given only a few minutes, troops pushing and shouting at them as they rounded up leftists beneath the dismal green canvas of armored trucks. On the morning they came looking for Gaston, his house was a jumble of clothes and bundles that his twirling dancer hands tied and untied. Photos, makeup, leotards, and ballet slippers were strewn across the floor, while he, a ballerina who'd worn his heart in his toe shoes for Allende, reached for a scarf, threw out a set of silk pajamas, selected a jacket, wondered about taking a polo shirt, packed some high-heeled boots, knocked a hairbrush to the ground, as two exasperated soldiers pointed their guns at him, fingers on the trigger. "Do you know where they're going to take us?" asked Gaston, arching a waxed brow. They said Pisagua. That's waves, beach, sand, and sun, thought Gaston, grabbing his bathing suit and a towel on the way out. And so, on those long afternoons in the concentration camp, facing the sea, while his fellow inmates argued in long political meetings to which he was not invited, while the other prisoners carved handicrafts or penned secret-resistant poems if the guards weren't watching, when the yellow sun glared off the turquoise blue of the waves, the figure of Gaston sunbathing in a Speedo on his orange towel, barbed wire framing him in the distance, was practically an advertisement for tanning lotion amid that landscape of isolation and death. The slumbering dancer's image must have been a strange contradiction, banished twice over on his square meter of sand, exile, wire fences, and watchtowers, where the guards laughed at the summer holiday he was taking. But really it was Gaston who was laughing at depression and just how serious it all was being in that prison. Minorities sometimes come up with other ways to act in contempt, using what seems like superficiality as a weapon. Gaston, tanning on his beach towel, knew how to break free from that yard of torment, as if a loca's irreverence could transform a beach towel into a rug for flying, a magic carpet that would hover over the iron bars, float out past the soldiers' guns, and raise him above that camp of horrors. Maybe some of the prisoners who got out of there alive still remember the morning when Gaston received his letter of safe transit. Grinning from ear to ear, Gaston carefully put away his bathing suit, folded his towel, and breathed deeply, gulping down air as if he wanted with a single sigh to erase the morbid atmosphere of that place. Then he wished everyone goodbye and, walking on the tips of his toes, crossed over the spikes at the entrance. And still glowing tropically, he disappeared from the road in a cloud of dust, never looking back. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Legacy Russell. I'm a criticism finalist. And my book is The Black Meme, A History of Images That Make Us. The Black meme often includes images of Black people as subjects of extreme violence or, conversely, as entertainers who perform their material within an economy of white spectatorship. While this usually takes place without Black consent or compensation, it nonetheless feeds into the pervasive and perplexing fetishization of Blackness as a signifying jewel of otherness or alterity, as culturally ascendant hypeware. In 2018, 19-year-old Swedish model and Instagram star Emma Hallberg gained attention for sharing photos of herself with her over 260,000 followers in what appeared to be blackface. Criticism was as swift as it was warranted. In response, writer Juana Thompson tweeted on the topic of white girls cosplaying as Black women on Instagram, subsequently writing a piece for Paper Magazine titled, "How White Women on Instagram Are Profiting Off of Black Women," in which she further interrogates the phenomenon of blackfishing. Blackfishing, when non-Black people pretend to be Black on social media, utilizing a combination of makeup, prosthetics, and even surgery to amplify the performance, is a rising constant, seen across a myriad of social media influencers. "I do not see myself as anything other than white," Hallberg told BuzzFeed in her defense. "I get a deep tan naturally from the sun." Conversely, as white womanhood dons Blackness, the platforms have included apps and filters to alter skin tone at will, a machinic play that offers a new twist to the legacy of colorism. Dawn Richard, star of girl group Danity Kane and a Black woman, said of Instagram filters in a 2013 tweet, "Filters are the new bleach. I mean, it's cheaper though, I guess." In 2014, writer Doreen St. Felix summed up this bizarre dilemma in a tweet of her own. "Everybody want to be a Black woman, but nobody want to be a Black woman." Thompson's tweet and subsequent article came nearly a year after writer Lauren Michelle Jackson penned a 2017 op-ed for Teen Vogue. In her piece, "We Need to Talk About Digital Blackface and Reaction GIFs," Jackson defines digital blackface as, quote, "a minstrel performance in cyberspace." Jackson had written first on the topic in 2014 in a piece for The Owl where she wondered, what is the half-life of a meme? What is the rate at which a good-natured meme decays into the grossest displays of public ridicule? The viral circulation of the Black body in the form of the reaction GIF, Drake caught in an eternal shoulder shake as he dances silently to his 2016 hit song Hotline Bling, Viola Davis as How to Get Away with Murder's Annalise Keating taking off her wig and makeup, Scandal's Kerry Washington as the fixer character Olivia Pope sipping Riley from her wine glass, lives as an archive of Black performance. The platform Giphy has become a monumental archive to Black movement, a living theater of actions on eternal silent loop, dutifully performing for an audience of millions. What the Black meme shows us as it unfolds is that it is being seen and consumed, but that this does not correlate with being compensated. This is why here together we wonder, how can we let all of these memes, all these versions of Black selfdom held captive, scream? What does a mimetic Black chant as a refusal of and resistance against digital blackface look like? The chapters of this book are the Black chant and curious incantation. Blackfishing and digital blackface go hand in hand, each bending to the other. The presence of this dual phenomena gestures towards the enduring legacy of minstrel shows, the theatrical tradition of blackface that finds its root as early as the 19th century. Whether it is Emma Hallberg or the infamously self-determined trans-black American academic and activist Rachel Dolezal, a self blackened in body or affect is one for capture. It is a body that, when donned, gives the wearer the permission to perform. This performance itself triggers a mandatory becoming. In this book, I argue that blackness in itself is mimetic, and by extension that the technologies of memes as a core component of a dawning digital culture has been driven by, shaped by, and authored by blackness. The transmission of such material, such as reaction GIFs and images of social media influencers painted head to toe in blackened skin tones, demonstrates the complicated power drawn from and the troubling racialized agenda triggered by the performance of black embodiment. Regardless of this complexity, it is very clear. Digital culture and the visual culture that carries it does not exist without black people. As media scholar Charlton McGillen aptly puts it, black people and black content and black cultural production really was at the core of what became the internet as we now know it today. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. I'm delighted and honored to be among all the writers. My name is Hisham Matar, and I'm reading from My Friends, which is in the fiction category. It is, of course, impossible to be certain of what is contained in anyone's chest, least of all one's own or those we know well, perhaps especially those we know best. But as I stand here on the upper level of King's Cross Station, from where I can monitor my old friend Hussam Zua walking across the concourse, I feel I'm seeing right into him, perceiving him more accurately than ever before, as though all along, during the 2 decades that we have known one another, our friendship has been a study, and now, ironically, just after we have bid one another farewell, his portrait is finally coming into view. And perhaps this is the natural way of things, that when a friendship comes to an inexplicable end or wanes or simply dissolves into nothing, the change we experience at that moment seems inevitable. A destiny that was all along approaching, like someone walking towards us from a great distance, recognizable only when it is too late to turn away. No one has ever been a nearer neighbor to my heart. I'm convinced, as I watch him go to his train for Paris, that city where the two of us first met so long ago and in the most unlikely way, that he is carrying, right where the rib cages meet, an invisible burden. One, I believe, I can discern from this distance. When he still lived here in London, hardly a week would pass without us taking a walk either through the park or along the river. We sometimes got into a debate, usually concerning an obscure literary question, arguments that, perhaps like all arguments, conceal deeper disagreements. I would sometimes, to my regret, for the gesture has always displeased me, tap my forefinger on his chest and let my palm rest there for a fleeting moment, as though to keep whatever it was that I believed I had placed there stable, and I would once again take note of the distinct pattern of his ribs, the strange way his bones protruded, as if in constant expectation of an attack. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you. I'm Jane Kamensky. My book, Candida Royale and the Sexual Revolution, is a finalist in the biography category. It's a story of somebody who tried very hard to tell her own tale and left an improbable archive that allowed somebody to do that. And I'm going to read from the epilogue, which is a little bit about that archive. Cynthia found the cartons of diaries and letters in a closet after Candace's death. She felt certain she should destroy them. Her son was there to help his mother and Veronica empty the place. Dig a hole in the garden so I can bury Candy's journals, she remembers telling him. But he worried that some future owner of the cottage would put in a swimming pool and unearth the papers and peddle them online. And so the pit remained undug and the archive survived another day. In time, Veronica Vera, Candace's executor, took the bold step of sending the remains of her friend's extraordinarily well-documented life into the world. Much as she had wanted to share her story, Candace worried about the fate of her paper carapace. What will become of it? She asked in her journal. Would her diaries and photos end up in junk stores and flea markets? She had longed to speak her piece, her way, rather than to wait for strangers to paw at my memories without even knowing my name. What became of the archive is this book. The papers of Candida Royale now live among strangers at the Schlesinger Library on the History of Women at Harvard Radcliffe Institute. I am but the first of those strangers to have sifted her archive, discovering her biography and her impact, but never having known her heart or her laugh. You can follow me there. The collection is fully open to research, which is fitting. Candace Vidala lived a life of radical and agonized transparency. If she couldn't quite stomach a feminism that made the personal political, she practiced a pornography that made the private public. Her boundaries were porous, like the edges of a self-portrait she drew in San Francisco in 1973, in which she depicted herself as a woman reaching, arms wide enough to grab the world. The passions and the perils of the 20th century flowed through her in that image, as in life. Thank you.
Hello, I am Trisha Romano. I am a nonfiction finalist, and my book is called The Freaks Came Out to Write, The Definitive History of the Village Voice, the radical paper that changed American culture. It is an oral history, so I am not used to reading. I'm going to read a chapter about Wayne Barrett, a part of a chapter about Wayne Barrett, the investigative journalist who first covered Donald Trump in the 1970s. And this chapter takes place just before he was elected in 2016. Wayne couldn't believe that Trump was winning. Tom Robbins, investigative journalist. Wayne appreciated the fact that Trump could be a serious player, given his willingness to play the race card, which was clear from his debut speech that he was going to go after illegal immigrants and Mexicans. As long as you're going to outwardly play the race card in the Republican primary, you can actually command a lot. And Wayne understood that. He was surprised, as the rest of us, the way that Trump just mowed down the rest of the opposition and that nobody could stand up to him. William Bastone, news reporter. I said, Wayne, don't you think people see through this and they understand that he's really just a con man and a huckster and a racist? The stuff goes back at that point almost 30 years with his father in avoiding renting apartments to black families in Brooklyn. And he was like, no, that's going to be a plus for him, for the people that he's going to end up attracting. And I said, so Wayne, if it ever came out that Trump used to use those words or use the N-word, and Wayne said, that would be good for him. He was totally right. And then 9 months later, he's talking about shooting people on Fifth Avenue. Trump understood that there's nothing really nothing I can do wrong because these people hate the people I hate, and we're all going to be together. Tom Robbins, investigative journalist. As someone who worked with the tabloid press for a long time, the people who invented Trump were all those tabloid gossip reporters who dined out from all of these items over the years and who reported them right up until the time he ran for president. This is one of the great unrecognized crimes of the press. We in the tabloid press created Trump. It wasn't Wayne. Wayne was going after him. Jonathan Z. Larson. This is the media's Frankenstein's monster. Tom Robbins. I sat with Wayne on election night, right up until the time the actual votes came back. Wayne couldn't believe that Trump was winning. Timothy O'Brien, news reporter. Wayne died the night before the inauguration. Mac Barrett, his son. Some 500 people were there at the funeral. Chuck Schumer spoke. The governor spoke. All of his family. Roger Stone via Twitter. Wayne Barrett was a piece of human excrement posing as a human being. Rot in hell, you prick. Mac Barrett. Schumer tweeted something about how if there's anything wrong with heaven, we'll find out about it. Wayne Barrett. My greenest journalistic prize was when Al D'Amato called me a viper on his memoir. I want it on my tombstone.
Hello, my name is Erika Morillo. My book is Mother Archive, a Dominican family memoir, finalist in the Autobiography. La Isla. On the cover of the Lonely Planet Guide to the Dominican Republic, there is a row of wooden beach houses painted in bright colors at the center of the image. A yellow door, a pink zinc roof, a coral veranda. The houses are canopied by palm trees so thick you can barely see the blue sky. At the bottom of the image, a single wave reaching its foamy peak. But what I fixated on was the small blue text on the left of the cover. Local secrets, best planning advice, 100% researched and updated. When you're struggling to find meaning in the absurd, anything can read like poetry. In our paradisiac corner of the world, tucked between the Caribbean Sea and the wider Atlantic Ocean, a woman is killed every 2 days at the hands of their partner. In La Isla, 1,228 kilometers of powdery white sand and turquoise water beaches circling women like a tight fist around their neck. In my motherland, 357 women were murdered in the last 4 years by their lovers. They lay in soiled suitcases in the matorrales, in large trash bags on the side of the road, on the pavement, 8 stories down from a hotel balcony, or in the case of Abuela, on her kitchen floor surrounded by you and your siblings. It has taken me 3 days to write this half a page, to articulate in words the origin of your hardness. I parse through this maelstrom of secrets and attempt to put together my own archive of our family, my personal guide to our motherland. I gather the information piecemeal with every question I ask strangers. With each new visit to the island, my family history 100% researched and updated, until someone is willing to let me into a new secret. But never from your lips. From your lips, only the palatable version. Your grandparents died in a car accident in Jarabacoa. Another cover that says nothing about the place where I come from. The real image behind your iciness, Abuelo and your brother's lifeless bodies on the outskirts of your childhood home. Abuelo, a man who killed your mother in their kitchen, and while your teenage brother chased him to take the gun, ended up killing him too before committing suicide. In your life and in mine, kitchens ablaze, home a treacherous place. When they found the bodies on the dirt road that curled down to the mountains to La Autopista Duarte, inside Abuelo's white shirt was a plane ticket to Nueva York. a journey his daughters would end up taking instead of him years later. Nueva York, a way out of an island where, after becoming orphans, his daughters were traded around like damaged cattle. Nueva York, the cold apartments your sisters arrived at on Vermilion Avenue in Inwood and Hunts Point Avenue in the Bronx. Sticky linoleum floors, cupboards crawling with German roaches. A place where no one knew them and they could start fresh. Nueva York, the city where his granddaughter now writes her only image of him. Thank you.
Hi, as the last reader, I feel obliged to assault you with 22 minutes of reading, actually. But no, I'm reading on behalf of Elias Khoury and Humphrey Davies, who both recently passed away, and this is in the Barrios Translation Prize. It's a book called Children of the Ghetto, Star of the Sea. Adam's encounter with Rabba Abd al-Aziz would stand in his memory as an image of the truth that he had only glimpsed. Born after the fall of Lydda and its transformation into a ghetto, his childhood was spent amid the whisperings of memory. And now, whenever he tried to remember that time in the ghetto, all he could see were the vague, disjointed images of a life lived through his mother's words, and also fragments of overheard stories, incomplete stories, as though the stories of Lydda had no beginning, or as though the people's tongues had been half cut out. They spoke without saying. They hesitated and stammered, and instead of telling what had happened, they swallowed their words. Words dissolved, my son, Manal said, as she told her only child how his father had died choking on the bullets that had ripped through his lungs. In Binyamin Park, beneath the incessant pelting rain, Adam discovered where words began. Well into his 50s, Rabba, his features slowly taking shape in the gloom, small, dull eyes, a large nose, an oval face, a stooped frame, took Adam on a journey to the village of Al-Gabasiyah, where he was born, where he had lived, and where he had been betrayed by betrayal. That was the expression Rabba used to sum up his life. Still, Adam sensed no sadness, for Rabba was not sad. The garden ghost had said, the garden ghost is Rabba, the garden ghost had said that he would never let sadness enter his heart and that he had discovered the beauty of solitude. Nothing beats living on your own, kid. It's amazing. I never get bored. I always feel like I'm busy even though I don't do much. I sit and my thoughts carry me away and then they bring me back. Our heads are full of pictures, you realize. How can I put it? My mind is like a spool of endless images. He said that he was on his own, that his wife and 4 children had gone to Lebanon, and that he had stayed because he wanted to reclaim his land. Now he worked as a caretaker for the park and waited. Where's the land gonna go? The land can't pick up and go, can it? So I'll wait. They'll have to give me back my land one day. How could they not? You think the Jews are cheats like us? Not a chance. And you, schoolboy, what do you think? Adam was lost. He'd been trying to dry his backpack and take out his books and notebooks to be sure they hadn't gotten wet by when Rabba surprised him with his questions about betrayal. The word itself, betrayal, was something he'd only ever heard from his stepfather, who would always talk about women's wiles and betrayals. Adam didn't understand what betrayed by betrayal meant, since it never occurred to him that those who collaborated with the Israelis might end up in the kind of misery he could see on the face of this man cloaked in darkness, whose small hand shook as he sipped tea, who exhaled the smoke from his cigarette into the emptiness of a tiny shack, and who spoke through a sputtered cough. Who was Rabba Abd al-Aziz, and what was his story? Adam was only able to connect the threads after the news of tragedy spread. Gabriel told him about a man he found hanging from the branch of a sycamore fig tree in the middle of Binyamin Park. Revolting, Gabriel said. What an idiot. If he wanted to commit suicide, he should have done it in his own home. But hanging yourself in the middle of the park where children play. He added, man is a vile beast. That's what my mother says. And when I ask her to stop saying it, she tells me off. Just think about it. I'm over 40 and my mother still calls me boy and tells me I don't understand anything because I've erased the stories of the ghetto from my memory. I've erased them too, Adam said. Stop talking shit. It's got nothing to do with you. So who was the man who committed suicide? Adam asked. The caretaker at Benjamin Park. The radio didn't say his name. He was probably one of those Holocaust orphans who came here because they had nowhere else to go, but he couldn't forget. That's what memory does to people. Memory kills, and we have to erase it. But he wasn't a Jew, I don't think, Adam said, voice trembling as he ran out of the garage. Where are you going? Gabriel shouted. Adam didn't answer. He ran to the park where he found a cordon of police officers. He tried to get through the line, desperate to bring down the hanging man and clasp him to his chest. But when he asked the security men about the corpse, claiming to be a relative, he was told that it had been taken to the morgue and they were unaware of the burial arrangements. The sycamore fig came to be known as Rubba's tree. That's it.
Hi, I'm Heather Scott Partington, MBCC president, and it's my immense pleasure to just wrap things up tonight. I want to thank every single one of our authors who read tonight, and we have been living with your remarkable words for a year, and it has, I know it's a cliche, but I said earlier that it's been an incredible privilege to hear your work come alive tonight. And tonight is special for us because this is our 50th anniversary reading. It's our first ever live stream of the reading, and it's incredibly special because of everything that you've offered tonight. And so I just want to celebrate everyone who read. I want to recognize your work as finalists. I want to recognize every comma you moved, every archive that you dug through, every time that you replaced a word with another word and then you replaced it back. We're so grateful for all of that toil that happened when no one was looking. So thank you for letting us be a part of that tonight. And I have some kind of housekeeping things. We're going to be here tomorrow night celebrating our 50th anniversary awards. So everyone who's joining us in the audience tonight, please come back. We also have some special awards, Service Award, Lifetime Achievement Awards that we'll be honoring some people with tomorrow. I wanted to direct your attention to the back of your program where we have our sponsors listed. I'd like to thank our production company, Wildbound, for bringing our live stream to everyone across the country. It'll also be available on our YouTube. I'd like to thank the New School, Lori Lynn Turner, our co-VPs of awards, Christoph Ermscher and Iris Jamal Dunkel. Sorry, hold on just one second. I wanted to remind everyone that P&T Knitwear is going to be out in the lobby, so please purchase these books. The greatest thing that you can do for an author is to purchase a book. Purchase one for yourself, one for a friend. Read them, talk about them, and help them get these books out into the world even more. And I just also wanted to let you know we are a board of volunteers. We're a 24-member board. We do everything for the MBCC for free. And we rely on donations from people like you who are watching us tonight and people who are here in our audience in order to put on events like this and to run an entire organization for the whole year. So there's a QR code on the back of your program. If you're watching by live stream, you can donate that way as well. We have a website, bookcritics.org/give, and we're running a campaign called 50 for 50. So we're asking if you are able that you give $50 in honor of 50 years. If you're not able, we'll take $5. We'll take a multiple of 5. We're just happy to have your support, and more importantly, the money. We're just happy that you joined us in this room. And to all of our authors, again, thank you so much for all of your words, and everyone have a safe evening.